It's recording now, guys.
I pressed the button, so we're,
All right,
audio is on.
And it's recording.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody online? No. Nothing is worse than going in a house. I've got these 3 homes that are owned by HUD, and I have to go in and do a walkthrough, and I have to sign in, but none of the pins work
No,
because there's no power in there.
there's something to be said about pencils.
I know, but I don't think I own one.
I just take my daughter's.
Okay, I'm gonna call this meeting of the Public Health and Safety Standing Committee meeting to order Tuesday, February 11th. Thank you for the minutes.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And we haven't got Doug here, so I liked him. If you liked him, then we'll approve him.
Yeah, I loved them.
You did.
I thought I did a great job.
Well, I think that's wonderful. Okay, Tim, appreciate you coming in on this nice and balmy morning.
Sure, yeah. And Tom apologizes, he had to leave to go to Washington DC because he's on some committee there, and he had to leave last night because there's a big storm. He was gonna leave this afternoon, but, so he's not here today. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm Tim Ryan. I'm the Deputy Chief of Fire Department here in Red Lodge, and Katie Hedke is here. She's my understudy for fire prevention stuff in the city, as I am planning to retire at the end of September this year, so.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I'm here to talk about, adopting the new fire code. The last time we adopted a fire code, I believe, was in 2016 or so. It's been a long time. The state of Montana got embroiled in a lawsuit with some folks in Belgrade, and that held up the adoption of the fire code at the state level for many years until that all settled. And so they have now adopted the 2021 International Fire Code, which is what we would like to do as well. So this is my kind of first introduction.
You said what year?
2021
21.
International Fire Code,
How often do they update that?
every 3 years.
Wow.
But the
So-
state, we tend to do it every 3 code cycles or so here, because it's quite a bit of work and it's a little bit expensive for us to update all of our software with new fire codes and all of that stuff to do fire inspections and all that kind of thing. But the state jumped from 14, I think, to 21 or something like that. So that's the ordinance draft I have for you is very similar to the last ordinance that was adopted with a few minor changes. But it basically allows the city to adopt the 2021 fire code. And then once I present this, the steps moving forward would be to present this to you. I'd let you guys review it, send it to the state fire marshal's office for their review, to the city attorney for their review, and then on to the city council for, 2 or 3 readings I think they have to do on it, so.
Yeah, two meetings at least. We have 2 readings.
Yep,
And does it have to be publicly noticed?
probably, yes, yep.
So that's probably 3. That sounds right, Jody?
Well, you have to have 2 public hearings.
For sure.
Yeah, so then
That's
we'll
good.
have a meeting to discuss it and then 2 public hearings. And then on that last one, so there'd be 3 meetings total with the discussion.
There's no real major changes, between the 2 codes, other than some modernization, the 2 versions of the code. Some, new construction materials are brought into it, stuff like that, but, the big change that we're discussing that hasn't really been addressed previously, in city ordinance is open burning.
That's big.
Yeah. And so what we're trying to do is clean up the open burning. There's been some confusion between the county burn permit system and our, fire code requirements.
Does
So
the
the
city have an ordinance against burning?
No, not per se. This ordinance, would
Drop that.
address it. So, I know Tom's been talking to the mayor a little bit about this, but, a couple of years ago, when they were doing this condo complex down here by Circle 17, they built a giant flash pile of green lumber, and it burned for like days and days and was really annoying to everybody that lived over there. There's some language in our current, fire code an ordinance that talks about like nuisance burning and like bothering your neighbors with smoke and all that. Yeah, so this version would have, you can see at the end, I've got some, I just noticed that there was some red line stuff in there that I forgot to clean up, but basically it eliminates all open burning in the city of that kind of like slash piles without a permit directly from the fire department.
He just started a fire, Adam just,
Well, they have a count, so right now there's a county permit in place that anybody just signs up, you fill it out and it automatically happens.
Yes, so here's the problem that if, what this ordinance does is this new one would allow small recreational fires in people's backyards, and it would allow another thing called, recreation fires, which are basically a small brush pile of a less than, is it 4 feet or something like that?
48 inches.
Yeah.
In diameter, I think is the way it reads now.
Yeah, so like, if you had a leaf pile that you wanted to burn, you could do that, without a permit. But if you wanted to do any slash pile burning, you'd have to come talk to the fire department. The current way that it works is they go on and they get a $5 county burn permit, and then they just burn away. And Tom and I have discussed, and we can't really find any legitimate reason to allow for open burning without talking to the fire department within the city. It's not so much the fire danger, because within the city, a lot of the stuff we're talking about here is like green deciduous trees that aren't gonna cause like a huge conflagration or anything. It's just, it's really a nuisance to people.
So when like at homecoming, when, the fire department's always there anyway, when they have their big bonfire,
Bonfire would be,
they would just go to they go to you guys anyway.
Yeah.
They have the fire truck there.
they go to us anyway, and they would be issued a permit essentially.
So when my neighbor goes in and burns his slash in the front yard where we're surrounded by trees, is that just a nuisance burning?
Yeah, that wouldn't be allowed, depending on the size of the slash pile. I mean, if it's greater than 48 inches and there's a height requirement, do you remember what it is? It's on our website.
And then 48 inches is diameter.
Yeah,
Right, it's 4 feet around, like a typical fire pit in your backyard is 4 feet and under. So, I mean, you could burn your yard debris in your fire pit, but you can't have it this big, huge, tall inferno
yes,
thing, I guess.
essentially correct, yes. I'm looking it up here.
If they call the fire department money, it's probably too
Yeah,
big.
yeah, well, it depends. I mean, not necessarily true, but more than likely, yes. So, let me see here. Yeah, basically what we're say is that if it causes a hazardous situation of any kind, then we can order the extinguishment of it, which we can do anyway. But, that's the process that it would go through. So if you were building a subdivision or something and you had to cut a bunch of aspens and you wanted to burn them, you'd come to us and get a permit, and we'd come up with a plan to do it so it didn't bother everybody.
Gotcha.
So it wouldn't be completely prohibited, but it's not something that you can just go get a $5 county permit for and do whenever you want.
Okay.
Because the county doesn't regulate it at all. They just issue you the permit, and that system mostly exists to give an education point, so that there's some reading you have to do about burning safely. And other than that, if someone calls 911, they can look in the permit system and say, oh, there's burning going on up there.
And what about what you're burning?
That's covered by the state DEQ. We don't have to adopt regulations. You can't burn tires and oil
Plastic.
cans and plastic. It has to be all natural debris. Even building materials, you can't burn like old houses and things like that anymore.
Oh, too bad.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking of that one across from the, gas station at the entrance to town.
Yeah, no, that would be, talk about a very, nuisance fire for everybody that lives around there.
Well, the fire department's right next door.
It would still stay good.
It would stink really bad, yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And it may be that they're saying you can't do it. Where this started was that fire that Ann was referring to on the south end of town. And as we were looking through our ordinance, I said, so explain to me this type of fire that doesn't cause smoke or a nuisance or, no, 'cause I'm not familiar with that fire. So that was kind
There's
of
a fire like that, huh?
most people don't mind, you know, their neighbors having a little campfire in their backyard in a fire pit, and a lot of people do that around here, and that's not what we're trying to prohibit. And a lot of people have little gas fireplaces, and those would be allowed too, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
So overall, fire pits are fine?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's open burning within the city limits.
Yeah, the fire code it's confusing because the way the county discusses, if you go to their county website and look at their burn permit system, the language they use is based on the wildland fire system, the terminology, and it does not match what the International Fire Code says. So when you're thinking about city regulations, read the code adoption, and that follows the fire code language. Unfortunately, like the wildland system is not something that's enforceable, it can't be adopted by the city, so we have to go with the fire code language. So they use the term open burning recreational fires, bonfires, portable outdoor fireplaces, and open burning are the four types of categories they put it into.
Hey, Tim. So a lot of times what my guys are running into, myself too, in the summertime, is people asking about, you know, what the fire danger is at, and if they can have A, B, and C in their backyard. A lot of times I don't know the answer. Where on your Red Lodge Fire Rescue's website do I navigate to give them the info? Is it the fire prevention or?
Yeah, that fire prevention site, and then you scroll down and there's an open burning section. There you go here.
Yes, it's right here, okay. So that's just all the rules and regulations?
Yeah.
And that changes, varies with the weather and the dryness?
Yeah, there is a caveat in here where we'll say that, like, if the fire danger is very extreme,
Yeah.
we could ban open burn, or any kind of burning,
Mm.
but it'd be really, really uncommon for that to happen within the city limits. Most
Yeah.
of the time, people are burning in little fire pits in their backyard, and it's green grass around it, and
Okay,
Would
no,
the
that,
wind be a factor too?
it could be high winds, but within the city, that fire danger is completely different than what the Forest
Oh, yeah.
Service is using out there, where they're surrounded by fuel and stuff like that.
yeah, I'll, just shoot them that website if they have.
Yeah, and we can maybe this spring, if you wanna get together, we could sit down and just discuss
Certainly.
how to do it, and they can give them all my cell phone number, and if they have a question, they can call me
Okay,
at any time.
it, you get a lot of phone calls, but all right.
That's all right, I already do.
He ain't
Yeah.
here, he's retired.
We'll just add them onto the list. Any other questions about that stuff? Again, I wanna emphasize, we're not trying to, like, tell people they can't burn in their,
I think that's just gonna be the big thing.
yeah.
To reassure people this has nothing to do with your little fire pit in your backyard.
Yeah.
Because you will have pitchforks. out.
Well, I
Right,
think
yeah.
everybody's a little nervous after the Pacific Palisades fire and the Altadena fire.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about that next. People's perceptions about what's possible or not. But any other questions about the code adoption?
Oh,
It reads pretty heavy, but it's really just, this language actually comes out of the fire code. The International Code Council has like pre-built templates for you to adopt. So if you were to look at the old one, forget the number, I think it's nine, it's entitled, I'd have to look it up again. I should have wrote down the number. Title 7 is the fire code regulations, and it's almost the exact same wording. We took a few things out and cleaned up some stuff.
but nothing major.
No, and one last thing that's included in my little thing is so right now, the city, this is the last time we adopted a code, the city adopted a fee schedule, because we do charge for fire inspections and for plan review and stuff like that, which is common. But back then, the city and the rural fire district were separate entities, and now that the city well, they're still separate, but now the city contracts with the rural fire district, so the rural fire district board wants to set the fees now instead of having the city set the fees. And that'll all go to the city attorney to make sure that that's cool. I did have a conversation with him a while back about that, and he said he didn't think there would be a problem.
I think that's probably an ordinance that we need to do, because normally what we do is we have an ordinance that says who sets it, and then the fees themselves are set by resolution. Does that?
Yeah,
the council?
and I think in this ordinance, there's language that says that the fees shall be set by the rural fire district.
Considering that the city contracts with the fire department, I don't know that we can really dictate what their fees are. Or they, you know,
No, we're
they
just saying
provide.
they're the one who do it.
Right, that's what I mean, I don't see a problem, I guess, with that.
No.
Not yet.
And-
Yeah, and in this draft under 717, it does say that the city of Red Lodge requires fees. Fees shall be collected by the fire department, and failure to pay fees, following fire prevention fees apply to this chapter and shall be set and collected by the fire department having jurisdiction. So basically, it says that the rural fire district sets the fees, and it has the list of fees, and then this is an old one. We're gonna have to do a new one because we changed the classification of inspection types and stuff, but the new one will match the ordinance.
Do you, to Jody's point, and I think that's what she's putting down now, those fees, you may not want to list inside of the ordinance, because that means there has to be an ordinance to change them.
Yes,
If we just say it's set by you guys, then you can change them
Yes,
without going
in the
through us.
packet there, that it is a separate resolution that's adopted by the Board of Trustees of the Rural Fire District. So there is a public governing board for people to protest fees if they want to. Yeah. I did want to talk just briefly about addressing. Right now, the fire department, historically, the fire department has done addressing for the city, and we are moving that to the county, and we will no longer collect fees for that. It's kind of an internal administrative change. Essentially, the county has been doing it for us anyway, and we've been collecting the fee, and the county has a much better system. There's a website, you can just go fill it out, and Tom Coley issues an address, and it's actually cheaper to go through the county than it is for us to do it.
I thought Tom Coley was already doing the addressing.
Essentially, yes, he is. John Trapp used to do it for a long time, and then the software was really super expensive, the GIS mapping software. They couldn't share licenses, so John would collect the application and then basically send it to Tom Coley, and then Tom Coley would do it. And it's just a silly thing, and we're just gonna wipe out the middleman and make it easier.
That makes sense. Now I know your favorite topic, water supply.
Yes, so, this was gonna be Tom's presentation, but, I just wanted to kind of go over, there is a lot of public concern after the fires in Los Angeles and hearing about people running, fire hydrants not running because there was no water left and all of that, and, that is the reality of a conflagration fire of that magnitude, and should something ever happen here, the same thing would happen. It's just not possible to have that much water available. I mean, you're talking Los Angeles has probably got one of the largest municipal water systems in the country, and they ran out. We have a pretty small water system that's, in some areas, is pretty old. Others is much more improved now, so, we just wanted to dispel any, perception that we had this unlimited water supply of stuff for some sort of fire like that. Now, these types of fires are really unlikely, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility. We all know where we live and what can happen when big fires happen.
How many open hoses or fire hydrants can you have before you start losing pressure?
Depends on where you're at.
Okay.
So,
Let's talk golf course.
yeah, we could talk golf course where there is barely enough water to put one house fire out. So if you had one fully involved house that you were trying to extinguish, that's a whole nother tactical consideration that you might take. But the golf course can only produce, those fire hydrants can only produce about 1,500 gallons a minute, which is not, seems like a lot of water. And if you just open a fire hydrant and let it run, it would make a big lake, but it's not very much. Whereas if you get down here on Broadway with the recent water projects, and even better down at the hospital, you're getting somewhere in the order of like 4,200 gallons, which is what you need for a large.
Why is it better at the hospital?
It's at the end of the system. There's more pressure and it's a bigger pipe that runs down that way.
I think Tom had told me that if there's a fire at the golf course and you open one hydrant, you're fine. You open up two, now you have 50%.
Yes,
You open up three and you're down to like 25%.
yes.
And I was just curious, I know I was raised in Topanga Canyon, which is very volatile. And, a lot of people could save their house by using their own hoses, wetting them down prior to the fire getting there and doing all that. Does that water from your hose also reduce the amount that's available for the hydrant?
Yes, so if you go up to the golf course, let's say in mid-August at like 4 in the morning, when all their sprinklers are running on the golf course, you're probably gonna get even less. It's all the same system.
Except those are on a well.
Well,
Those ones, right.
hopefully,
Hopefully.
but they're not all.
The golf course is on a well.
But everyone else's lawns are all connected to the same thing. The more people that are up there flushing their toilet and filling their cups of water, all of that stuff, it all works together.
One.
Yep.
And what can be done to rectify that?
So, there is a plan to fix this. The holdup is that when you go up to the golf course and you turn right on Lazy M there's that little pump house there.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, that was originally designed to boost the water supply, but the way they built it, it actually restricts it. And so, there's a plan to make that water main larger. That would be a good question for Public Works, because I know Jim.
And we're doing that this year. That's that 16-inch water bypass.
Well, I knew that there was
So that
something,
increases pressure, but it does not increase flow.
it doesn't increase flow,
It does not increase flow because there's still a limited capacity.
because it's always been about the flow rate. So
No,
what
it
can
should
be,
increase volume.
Yeah, yes, that's a flow amount.
It should improve it quite a bit, and it was engineered to do that. But what it is actually engineered, I haven't seen any plans yet since that was done.
Yeah, and the other question I heard asked that I don't, is just like we asked about the rest of town. I think Thomas said, just because of our flow, we could do like 2 or 3 hydrants simultaneously.
Yeah,
That's it. And then the other thing I have to remember in California is every time a house burns down, what are all the pipes inside of a house made out of?
well, we know they're toxic.
Well, yeah, but the water's just
Melt.
flowing.
Yeah.
So as soon as the house burns down, it's free-flowing water, and the next one's free-flowing water. And then that's part of why, when they said they were opening hydrants and not getting water, it wasn't mismanagement, it's limitations of what water systems are designed to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when Bone Daddy's pancaked a couple of years back, their sprinkler riser in that thing was huge. It's, 4 inches, and it was just an open geyser once it broke off. So it's a kind of a similar thing. And same thing when we had, water mains wash away in the creek, and then the whole water system is just flowing into the creek, and getting around to shut all that off was a big priority, so.
So during a fire, one should shut off their water and gas.
So there's another factor involved in how fire hydrants work, and that's whether they're interconnected or not. So city water systems are designed to be looped, with generally along blocks. And over the years, the city has done really good work tying things in together. There used to be a lot of dead end lines that would just go, like Hagen here down at the end. I remember when I first got hired, I went down to test a hydrant down there, and I think I got like 400 gallons a minute because it was a 3-inch line and there was a dead end. Well, now all that stuff is connected together, and so that increases the number of fire hydrants you can open at once, but you have to be thoughtful about it and try to go to different parts of the system. Like, you wouldn't want to open like 3 hydrants in a row on Broadway. You'd want to open one on Broadway, maybe one a block over here, one another block that way, so you're getting more distribution from the system, because the closer you are, the more it's just pulling all from the same spot, and it can only move so much at one time.
We haven't seen you out testing fire hydrants for a few years, but maybe I'm just somewhere else when that happens.
So Public Works has kind of taken that over. I used to do it, and it caused all kinds of pain and consternation in town because everyone's water would turn orange. I actually just talked to Mike about this a couple weeks ago, and he's working on remapping all the fire hydrants, and we're working on getting another system. So because there's been so much work on the water system done, all the hydrants have been open at some point every year for the last 10 years. Excuse me. So we've kind of backed off because the public is already annoyed enough that the streets are all tore up and they don't have water for half the day or whatever's going on. But it'll come back into practice.
And you guys know where the fire hydrants are, even if there's a big pile of snow on it?
We do.
Okay.
And I've also been working with Public Works to flag them all, so you've probably noticed if you drive around town, there's more and more flags.
I have
And it's,
seen more and
it's the
more.
property owner's responsibility to make sure that the fire hydrant is clear in front of their house.
Yes, technically speaking, but
I know.
nobody does that.
I do,
And it's
in
really-
front of Market 55,
I think my mom-
55,
you
I'm
do?
out there digging it up.
Yeah.
No, Catholic.
Broadway's easier, but if you
Oh,
think like,
St. Agnes,
Yeah.
Yeah,
God bless them.
I don't have one.
one of the points of flagging
would
them
do
is so that the Public Works people can see them when they're plowing and they don't bury them, you know, like if you live, I remember
Yeah.
driving by one time and some poor guy was trying to dig out his fire hydrant, and there was literally like, it was like a 12-foot snow pile on top of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, dude, there's another one like a block away, don't have a
Yeah.
heart attack out here digging this.
We'll skip that one.
Yeah.
This is just for my own, curiosity. So like, if you guys roll up on a structure fire and like you have, like you said, like an 8-foot drift on top of one of those hydrants and it's like the best accessible one or like maybe the only accessible one, I guess, do you have the opportunity to switch hydrant locations and just run a hose longer, or like, do you have a way to like get all that, you know what I mean?
We'll just go to the next one.
Gotcha.
We
Okay.
have like thousands of feet of 5-inch diameter hose.
Gotcha.
It's kind of problematic in some areas, like, I remember one time we had a structure fire over here behind the Circle 17, behind those apartments, Grant, that
Yeah.
little tight street back there.
Mhm.
And the closest fire hydrant didn't work. We went to open it and it just broke, the stem broke, because it was, installed in 1945 or whenever. And so we went to the next one, but we had to go across the street, and so then you gotta put somebody up there to stop people from driving over it.
yeah.
People will drive over it anyway, but
It's actually a traffic offense.
it is.
Yep.
And then what capacity do you have on trucks?
Yeah, so
That was my next question.
So our the way we operate tactically is less reliant on fire hydrants for a lot of reasons, but, so we don't even pull a fire hydrant until after we've initially attacked the fire. So the first new fire engine in the city that would come in has 1,000 gallons of water on it, and then we have two 2,000-gallon water tenders that come with it. So we show up with 5,000 gallons of water. And we use a system called compressed air foam, which greatly reduces the amount of water that you need. Kind of like, it makes like you can change the consistency of it, but it makes like almost, you could go from like shaving cream consistency to like more water consistency, depending on what you're doing, but it stretches the water quite a bit. So we'd have to go through that first 5,000 gallons, which is stretched probably by double with the foam system, so maybe the equivalent of 10,000 gallons of water, and then we would go find a fire hydrant. Whereas in big cities, like the first thing they do, like at Billings, when they're going to a structure fire, they stop at the fire hydrant, a guy hops off, they put a hose on it, and that's the first thing they do. For us, that's way far down the line,
And are those trucks always filled with water?
always, yeah. Hence the giant heating bill that we have at the fire station.
Just
How about
so they don't.
secondary sources
Yeah.
like ditches,
Yep.
creeks?
We can pump out
Rock
of
creek.
ditches and creeks and all kinds of stuff. We don't really do that in the city because we have fire hydrants. It's something that's more along the lines of our rural fire fighting, because there's no hydrants out there. But yeah, we train on pumping out of like ditches on Remington Ranch and all of that area. Rock Creek, if we had to. Typically, we train practicing on Rock Creek further up where there's no municipal water supply.
How big is that pump mechanism to like pull water out of a creek or
It's not very big. It's kind of a two-step process. So we set up a fill site.
Yeah.
And we start what's called a tender shuttle or water hauling operation. So we have like a giant swimming pool size. It's basically like an above-ground swimming pool, a really expensive version of it.
Yeah.
And we'll set that next to the fire engine, and then we'll start this circle. We have another water tender we can bring in from our station and, our new station, and that adds another 1,800 gallons, and so you get this like 6,000 gallon circle going with water tenders going to the fill site, filling, and then dumping in this tank.
Oh, nice.
The tank is 5,000 gallons, I believe. It's been a while since it's a 5,000 gallon tank. So then the engine pumps off of that tank and has the goal is to get ahead of yourself, and then you just keep the shuttle going and filling, and you can run. We passed our ISO water hauling test the last time we did it, and you have to be able to maintain 650 gallons a minute for 30 minutes. You have to do an initial, like, 1,200 for 10 minutes, and then you have to maintain a certain flow.
Well, I was curious, and especially in the California fires, where every single one of those houses had a pool, why they didn't pump water out of the pool.
Well, so you gotta understand that these conflagration fires happen so fast that there's really no safe way to extinguish, when you've got that many houses on fire, you're not gonna save them. And the way those fires occur is not like you think, like, it caught the trees on fire next to the house, and then the trees caught the house on fire. It's the debris falling off of the house on fire, moving to the next one and setting their gutters on fire, and then all of a sudden you've got this huge rain of burning debris falling on multiple houses at one time, starting 20 or 30 houses on fire at the same time. And then once that's happening, there's no amount of aircraft or helicopters or fire hoses or people or apparatus to combat something like that.
Did you try to set up a line?
You try to stop it at a certain point, yes.
Because I have seen the fires where it does do the tree topping thing.
Sure.
And heavily, it was in the Sierras, and the fire just went from treetop to
Yes,
treetop.
so when you're talking about a wildland fire up here, like I personally watched the West Fork torch off, and it went off the whole side of the whole south, I watched the whole south side of the West Fork of Rock Creek do what's called a spontaneous aerial ignition, and the entire side of the mountain caught on fire all at once because of radiant heat from the other side.
Wow.
That's one time, and then it moved from treetop to treetop all the way down. That's like typical dense forest wildland fire behavior. Where you're in these areas like the Los Angeles area, or even within the city of Red Lodge, it's, once you get a couple structures going, the goal is to stop other structures from catching on fire, not save the ones that are on fire per se.
What do they call you guys have a term for like the liquid tar or gas or whatever, that all the asphalt and shingles that are just kind of that burning flame igniter, what was that Tom called it?
No, I don't know.
It was like the shingles are like floating petroleum
Yeah.
gas fires.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, once they start flying off in the air and you get winds like they had in Los Angeles, I mean, like huge chunks of burning stuff can fly. And then you've got somebody's house that's got some nice pine trees around it, and they never clean their gutters, that lands in the gutter, catches all the dead pine needles on fire in their gutter, and then it catches the edge of the roof on fire, and just goes from one to the next. During the Derby fire, which was in 2007, I think, you know where Beehive is?
Yeah.
In Stillwater River?
Mhm.
There's a couple of subdivisions over there, and it was really odd because everything around the whole subdivision was burned. All the trees are gone, but you went into the subdivision and there's like one house here is burned, one house clear over here is burned, the other ones in the middle are fine. And if you went and looked, you could see where somebody had like a big flower pot that was all dry sitting next to their house, and burning stuff got in there and it started the side of the house on fire. But the other ones that didn't have stuff around them were fine. So it's kind of an odd, it's an odd thing.
So, and what about defensible space? Is that something that we're not gonna worry about here in town?
So, actually Katie's more of an expert on defensible space, but, I actually had a woman call me because we did a defensible space, like, talk at the Roosevelt Center last year, and she called me, and she lived up in the golf course. And her house was, you know, all manicured, perfectly green lawns with like a couple aspen trees around it. I'm like, you're good. You don't need to cut your aspens down around your house because this is not going to catch on fire. When they talk about defensible space, they're really talking about out, you know, you go up the West Fork and look at some of these houses, or up the Main Fork and go into some of these subdivisions up there. That's where we're talking defensible space. And even then, that stuff is so thick around it that all you're doing is giving us a chance to get in there. But within the city, I mean, it's maybe not wise to have a giant pine tree right next to your house. But if you're curious about it, or you know anybody that asks about it, you call us and send Katie over to look at it.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Tim kind of mentioned that Tom is planning on being here in a couple of weeks for the council meeting to do a more public presentation. So if you guys think of any additional questions off of this, a lot of it's gonna be similar. He gave a talk, you were there when he gave his talk in the LBA, which is kind of what spawned all of this. And then also with that is we're gonna talk about approaches to how to do this from a city perspective, just kind of a funding thing and the challenges we have there.
Find out what we can do. Okay, well, we're down to our last 10 minutes.
Yeah. Anything else for me?
Diamond Seed, Spires, same situation as the golf course.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all the same water line.
Gotcha.
Is Diamond C would be further down the line, and Spires would be goodbye Spires?
You know, it's weirdly consistent throughout the golf course, is the flow.
Really?
There is some amount of, they were smart and it's all 8-inch water mains up there, so you can get some friction loss in the distance, but not remarkably so. What would really help them is if they, which we petitioned for way back when they did the Spires, and the developer then got away with not doing it, was hooking that end of that back into the city down by the hospital. And same with Diamond C, and then looping the Spires back
And that
around.
would loop it.
That would have made a huge difference, but they did not do that, because it was very expensive.
And if there were a big fire at the golf course, everybody could turn on their sprinklers,
They could.
because if they're done by well and power's still on,
Well, I don't think any houses up there around Wells, there might be a couple.
There's
A lot.
more than not,
For
actually.
irrigating.
as many, otherwise you've got a $600 or $800 bill a month
Right.
for watering your lawn if
It all pays for itself in 2.5 years.
Yeah, my parents ran into that.
yeah, my mom did too.
I've
You
seen
know.
people in here yelling about their water bill that was up on the golf course, because their sprinkler's on an automatic timer.
Yeah.
Turn the timer.
So having a well is well worth it because of the price. I think it's one of the places in the city that we allow wells, which isn't always the case. There's always been this scuffle about allowing a well in the city limits. Yes, Mr. Mayor?
I don't know, Tim, can you speak to, so last year we had a specific, we've got a house within a block or two of here that stacks firewood
Oh,
all the way around the house, point you can't see a house, and we had actually, fire department came in and looked at, somebody raised it as a public health and safety concern, and they came and looked at it, and they said, not a concern. It might take us longer to put out, but it didn't create or pose a threat to any greater threat to anybody else. Do you wanna speak, or can
and
you
there's
speak to
big
that?
trees over all that.
Yeah, so there's language in here, I believe, or there is language in the fire code. So remember that this ordinance is like a tiny scratch of the surface, and the fire code is like this thick of a book that covers everything. And there is, you could, with our guidance, write them a ticket for storage causing a fire hazard. Typically, the stuff I see around here doesn't concern me, and I know the house you're talking about, and I've been that way.
And that,
for
well,
years.
and Tom researched it and got back after talking to you, I think,
Mhm.
and he was like, it's no more flammable than all the other 100-year-old houses with trees and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah, good place.
I guess.
And
Really nice, though.
there's some, I try to think about those kinds of situations and the long process that's gonna be involved, so go write them a ticket, they can appeal, they can go to court, and then they can also appeal the fire code violation to the council. And, unless it's really egregious, like, back in the day, before AY Supply actually burnt down, they were on the verge of going down that road. But then it burned down, and so we haven't had problems since, so.
So does this address our ability to handle that at an appropriate level going forward then?
The fire code does. Adopting the fire code itself, and then within the fire code, there's a whole, the very first section is all general requirements, and basically, it authorizes the fire code official, who's already having jurisdiction, which would be me or Tom or his designee, to cite people for violations of the fire code. So, yes.
So when you guys look at that, the question is, how quickly are you comfortable and happy with it and ready to get it on the main agenda?
I would say we should probably get it on the agenda as soon as possible. But Tom's gonna be gone for a week.
He's back, he's just in DC this week, he's back for our next meeting.
Yeah,
And it would be an ordinance, so it's 2 readings anyway.
yeah.
I do need to get it to the state fire marshal and to the city attorney first.
Before
Yeah.
we have it on there.
This
Yeah.
is I wanted to present it to the committee first, answer any questions, and so that you all can, and be a representative and have some understanding, and then I'll get it to the city attorney this week.
And even if we had it on council, it would be just for discussion in 2 weeks, so
Okay.
it's basically, we're looking a month out before we'd be taking our first reading.
Okay, cool. I don't want it to go to the
We're gonna do it right, not fast.
attorney, and then you guys are halfway down the process, and he's like, oh, you gotta change all this stuff, so. I'm pretty confident that it's good, but.
Doug, did you have any questions?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Ann?
I'm good, thank you, thanks.
I get to see him every month, so I think he's been hearing about this for a while.
He's been snoozing over there, 'cause it's like, yeah. Well, thank you, really appreciate
Tim.
the
You're welcome.
information, Tim.
You're welcome, you're welcome. I'm sorry if I hogged up too much of your meeting.
No,
I'll
No.
burn through mine.
yeah. And I appreciate the calls for service numbers, chief.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of curious on 18 ordinance violations.
Yep, okay, so, parking enforcement and others. That's, ordinance violations, that covers, mostly, I'd say, parking complaints and parking enforcement.
Well, people are parking too long in one spot, or,
It could be anything, you know, so, wintertime especially, we run into vehicles, we get a lot of calls from plow drivers, stuff like that. So, I'll go through it real quick. Calls for service total, 206, 39 cases generated. Notable, arrests, there were more than that actually, because we did a lot of warrant services. Evidence submission, drug photo, another 376, approximately 1/4 pound of methamphetamine, oxycodone, $500 in cash, 2 firearms. Not a ton of traffic stops, we're looking at about 70. Thankfully, no injury motor vehicle crash that month. 4 criminal traffic offense, 10 non-injury motor vehicle crashes though, but that just comes with, you know, the time of year we're in.
is criminal traffic offense drunk driving?
Yeah, it falls in there. DUI, reckless driving, stuff like that. Yep. Public service, robbery and burglary alarm 4. Thankfully, no child welfare checks. 7 welfare checks and citizen assist. Assisted with 4 medical calls for service. And this is my team, this isn't me. Fire department assist 2. Criminal investigation follow-up, 10 citizen contacts, 12 citizen assist, 15 assisting other agencies. That could fall under, court security, that could fall under assisting alternatives with urinalysis, like, you know, Cheyenne, Wiley. So they have a male UA, obviously, they call a police officer over to handle that. No death investigations, that's great. Low number on vandalism, which is great, that's a low number, so,
Too cold.
well, yeah.
I was gonna say, all you,
Yeah, nobody wants to go.
all you have to do is follow the footprints out.
Yeah, you know, and actually, we've had that before.
I know.
Somebody tagged the side of our building here, with a message to the police department, which they actually misspelled, and we followed their footprints back to their house and then served a warrant on it the next day.
We had one
You
with a
probably
neighbor.
remember that, don't you?
I just think it's wonderful.
We had
Yeah.
one with a neighbor that you could follow the footsteps.
Oh, yeah,
across the
burglaries,
street.
same thing.
Same thing down at the gas station.
Yep, burglaries,
Follow
same
the-
thing.
It's like,
Narcotics contacts, which just means preliminary investigation, we had 3, 4 search warrant executions, 4 arrest warrant services, 2 assaults, minimal activity at the school, just some officer presence. They had this big symphony there, so we had a couple of police officers
Oh.
rolling through and hang out for a while. It was a big event, it was actually really cool to watch. Disorderly ordinance violation, no missing persons, that's great. A lot of fraud, and that's just, those numbers are only climbing. A lot of times, our biggest, I would say, victims of, fraud are the elderly, and, you know, they,
I mean, like-
unfortunately, a lot of them will take people at their word, especially over the phone.
and Facebook?
Facebook is a good one, yeah. Facebook, social media, telephones, mail is another one. I always tell people, and I have handed out pamphlets before to the senior center, just so they can hand out to their visitors that, if the IRS needs to contact you, they will never, ever do it by phone. It's always through mail.
The
Yep.
gal in my, the insurance place the other day, and her Peacock wasn't working, and she called Peacock.
Mm-hmm,
The number, she Googled the number for Peacock,
mm-hmm.
and they cleaned out her bank account.
Yep. I've had people send we've intercepted packages with $25,000 in cash in it being sent out, thankfully, recovered. Mental health intervention, 5, restraining order, unfortunately, child sex offense, 3 domestic violence, 1 indecent, 6 disturbances, 2 stalking, 5 harassment calls, 1 additional sex offense, 2 animal complaints, 1 child abuse, 1 suicidal subject. And,
Chief, on the cases generated at the 39,
yes, those
do
are,
you have a feel for what the split is versus city versus higher court?
off the top of my head, I'm not sure. Those are all active investigations. Most likely when we generate a case and actually start working a case file on something or someone, it involves criminal activity. So, a lot of times, I would say right now for our major cases, the overwhelming majority of them are over at the county courthouse through district court because it's at a felony level. Some of them have gone federal. I have another one that's actually getting ready to go federal here soon. And then city court, obviously, misdemeanors and stuff like that.
The reason I bring that up is, comparing us to some neighboring towns and stuff, they may have a lot more cases, but if you go look at it, it's a lot of like speeding tickets and stuff versus what our officers are focusing on.
Right, yeah, a lot,
Heavy duty stuff.
yep, a lot more calls for service in terms of traffic violations. I have been asked the question before. You know, other municipalities in the county, they have a lot of traffic, and ours is a little less. Why is that? And then I'll run the numbers and I'll say, well, okay, so their active caseload on investigations, stuff like drugs, rape, burglary, stuff like that, is way down. Their traffic stops are way up. And when I compare the two, they have 84 open cases for 1 year, while we have, I think, 402. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And it all just depends, number one, time of year, temperature, which is actually really, that plays a lot into it.
Does.
Yeah, nobody wants to go out and do burgs or vandalize anything when
I
it's
mean, that just
50
shows,
now,
I mean,
so.
if you want our traffic,
I think it's great, to tell you the
if you want
truth.
it,
So February's an easy month.
if people are complaining about, not enough patrol out, then we need more police officers.
Yeah, no.
You can only do so much, is
Yep.
basically what's happening.
And yeah, quick update with that. Danae, God bless her, is in the process of assisting me with another grant application for a full-time police officer, which would be used for crime prevention. And what we are doing is we are, designing it for, crime, drug, bullying, violence prevention to have it in the school. So, I mean, like, the school is working on their side of things, which is great. We're also supplementing it too, because like, if we can get both grants, that's fantastic.
Better still,
Better still, yeah, I mean, you know, aim
doubling up.
for 2 and hit 1, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, better
Yeah,
yet, get
yeah.
2.
I want to talk about enforcement.
Yes,
We have a problem. I've been here a long time and things aren't enforced.
uh-huh,
Okay, now we have a new ordinance that the officers have to take care of, which is snow.
yeah.
And
That's not a new ordinance.
It's been, so, like, in terms of like sidewalk and ice removal and stuff like that?
Yeah.
yeah,
It's been here for like, since 2016.
okay, well, my point is nothing's enforced. Do the officers, okay, we evidently, I was a guest back in the fall when you were enforcing overnight parking,
Uh-huh,
and then there's the RVs and boats on the street.
yes, yeah.
I mean, what are we doing about enforcement, and and that's my question.
Yeah, so, a lot of our enforcement, like you said, a lot of it does pertain to parking. One of the things that I've been discussing with the mayor and Dennison is they, somewhat revamped the system for businesses with ice and everything on the sidewalk, which, yeah, it is a problem. We're not turning a blind eye to, a lot of ordinance violations. Like you can see, we have 18, and those are all mostly proactively enforced. A lot, you know, some of them are called in, but I do have guys out there that in their downtime or in between calls, they're seeing stuff like this and tagging vehicles and,
I'm not being, critical,
yeah,
I think it's an impossible job,
yeah, 100%.
and so
Just like drug issues.
but
Yeah.
it's gotta be fair. And
Yeah.
it's hard to be fair, because if RV's over here, you ticket him, and this guy wakes up and says,
Yeah,
why did I get a ticket and he didn't get a ticket? I
Yeah,
mean,
we hear that all the
that's-
time.
That's what,
All the time. One of the things that I recommend to people that bring that up, especially like if their vehicle's getting tagged, I'm not notorious for cutting out parking tickets. Some other guys are. The best thing for me is when somebody says, well, I got tagged, however, my neighbor did not. Number one, what we try to do is we run the plate, we get the return through CGen, and then they have that FWP tag now where it returns with their phone numbers. So we will do our best to just give them a call and say, hey, listen, can you please move your vehicle? A lot of times they're not there, but the best way to solve that, and I've mentioned to people before, is, yeah, you did get tagged, and your neighbor is parked illegally. I understand that. In the future, please, if they're parked illegally, the best way to go about that is through calling dispatch and let them know. That way it generates a call for service. So like when a call for service, unless if it's just absolutely asinine and we can handle it over the phone, if a call for service pops and my guy doesn't take it at some point during their shift, they're gonna have to have a really good reason why. So when that call pops on our computers in our cars, that is their responsibility now. You have to handle that call before the end of your shift, and obviously calls are prioritized.
Of course.
Yep.
I had a gal yesterday that came into the shop that was looking for whoever owns a electric black pickup truck.
Really?
Because she clears her, city-owned land in front of her house so
Yeah.
that she can park there, and this black pickup truck keeps parking there. And I
If it's legally parked on a way of the state open to the public, is it a kind of what's the best word to describe? Is it a rude move to park in front of your neighbor's house? 100%, yes.
of course,
Is it legal? Yeah,
that's what I told her.
yeah.
She wasn't happy, but I told her,
Yeah.
the best you can do is put a note on it and say, as a good neighbor, we
Yeah.
would appreciate you not.
Yeah, and we're doing our best too with people that are getting stuck in the snow and stuff like that. The plows, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They have no choice but to keep the streets open. So like, a couple weeks ago or a week ago, this gal just a stone's throw away from here was trying to dig her car out. So I stopped. We dug her car out and got her out of there. And we're trying to keep up as best as we can.
Well, one thing on Broadway, between 8th and 14th, where the businesses are supposed to clear the snow off the sidewalk,
Yeah,
but this is my public works complaint,
sure.
which is then plow goes through really fast and they throw all this hard bricky snow
Yeah,
onto the sidewalk.
yeah.
They've already got in your phone.
And
Yeah.
you can't,
We've already,
and you can't shovel it, you can't snow blow it.
Yeah, unfortunately, those plow drivers, they're not left with a lot of options. When I lived downtown, there've been times where my patrol vehicles plowed in. And they didn't do it on purpose.
No, but the
But they-
state, when they clear the sidewalk, the parking
Oh,
area.
the state.
If
Okay.
that's the state, when the
Okay.
state goes through.
Yeah.
And I
And like-
gotta expect that it's speed that's causing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember one time 2 years ago that not only, it was all the way up against the building. So the
Mhm.
entire sidewalk was this high in that road junk. So,
And Mike's having a follow-up conversation with our MDOT rep on that to kind of revisit speed. The other thing, and we don't have a lot of time to, but you guys saw in there what our current ordinance says. It mostly, now, one of the things for you guys to look at is this mostly addresses the downtown stuff that's adjacent to MDOT.
right,
And then, I got a letter, an opinion from our attorney, and basically what we're looking at is snow stops at 10:01, the day after it stops. We will give them a notice or a heads up. You've got 24 hours to solve it. That's where the tickets come in, warning 50, 100, 200, or whatever those numbers are. 24 hours after that is, he believes we then have the right to go in and clean it and send the bill to do that. And by the way, we will outsource that. We don't have the staff to do it because during storms and stuff, that's one of the issues that has come up when it comes to, can we just clear it? If we clear it, we're basically outsourcing it to somebody else. So if that's, and there are several business owners independently, they're talking, it came up through ROBA and didn't succeed, but basically it will be cheaper if they decide they wanna hire it out, it'll be cheaper for several business owners to get together and kind of form a coalition and do it. But what we will start doing is notice after they're in violation, 24 hours later, and we don't have to have approved, because one of my concerns is, do we have to prove they've received it? Do we have to, and then one of the questions that came up was, and this is where council can weigh in, one of the questions that he thought that this read that we needed to give them notice and then clear it 24 hours later, or the next day. And I think that's probably a good policy action, even if, you know, the problem is it could have been sitting there for a couple of days before we cleaned it out by then, which just means it'll be pricier. And in addition, he just wrote the ticket. I'd like to see a nice little handout sheet that we can give them, and I'll work with the chief to find out if it does need to be the officer who's on, or if I can go down and tape it to people's doors and windows, or if Brian can tape it to doors. The attorney's opinion was that's sufficient. All we have to show is that we've made an effort. We don't have to show that they received it. We don't have to show that they've got it. But basically, the spot where we can cause it to be removed and send them the bill is 24 hours after they got a notice at the point they were out of compliance.
Okay, that, the other thing is, what are the fines if a neighbor puts the snow, clears their snow onto your property?
If you guys look through there, I don't think there is any right now at all, because our snow ordinance is really written for the business district stuff. So whatever, you guys are council, you're the ones who make those rules and decide what we're gonna do.
I'll have to look and see.
And so like sidewalks that aren't part of the downtown business district aren't included right now.
No, and I knew that, but I have seen people clear the snow from their property and put it on their neighbor's property.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
Yep. I know you guys sort of cut short on time. A few weeks back, I mentioned that I wanted to propose ordinance for criminal instrument. It's written
what
up.
is criminal instrument?
So what I can do, instead of reading the whole thing, I can actually just send it to every member of the committee.
Instrument.
Yeah, concealing, like mechanical devices used to conceal illicit substance.
Right.
So, we don't have time to talk about it right now, but I can scan it and send it out to the members of the
Please.
committee, just so you can glance at
Will
it.
you send it to Lonnie, so Lonnie can
Yep.
send it as a BCC, so
Yep.
we don't
That'd be
get a
great.
quorum going?
Yep, absolutely.
Are you talking like a big, something that allows me to cut locks as a criminal instrument, or?
No, those are burglary tools. So like, which we've been coming across those too. Criminal instruments like, magnetic or electrical, operated systems within motor vehicles, homes, anywhere else, like to conceal something like illegal firearms, drugs. So have you seen those hidden compartments in vehicles?
I haven't, but I'm not in that market.
If you ask your son, I'm sure he's seen thousands of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
And we're gonna go
Sandy,
ahead
do you
and,
wanna- yeah.
yep,